Hello. Special thanks to Onasaber for sponsoring a 90,000 subscriber lightsaber giveaway. All the details in the pinned comment down below. Our story begins on Naboo. Qui Gon Jinn looked down at an endless pit at the back of the Theed power supply. He looked down at his lightsaber with shame and extinguished it. Qui Gon heard a student running up behind him as he asked if he was alright. He turned to his student and nodded his head. The Jedi Master extinguished the life of the first Sith seen in over a millennia. A lightsaber wound to the chest and falling down an endless pit would likely do the job. Qui-Gon patted his Padawan on the shoulder and told him that they must inform the council what had happened. They returned to the various ray shields and got to the hangar bay to realize that Skywalker was no longer in it. Qui-Gon was naturally unnerved, but then he remembered that the R2 unit was with him. Hopefully the droid would be able to maintain the safety of the Chosen One like he did the Queen and Naboo before their arrival to Tatooine. Qui-Gon was able to inform the council of the death of the Sith here on Naboo. In the coming hours, it would be confirmed that the throne room was captured by the Queen, and the Gungans were able to win the battle in the fields of Naboo. While the two Jedi waited for the Council, and of course the newly elected Chancellor, to arrive at Naboo, Qui-Gon spoke to Obi-Wan alone. He told his apprentice that he believed that the Force would take them in different directions in due time. He believed that Obi-Wan would make a fine Jedi Knight in his endeavors. Obi-Wan asked again if Qui-Gon truly believed he was ready, and Qui-Gon assured him that he was more than ready. Obi-Wan then proceeded to ask what would be done if the Council didn't accept his proposition to train Anakin Skywalker. Qui-Gon simply told his apprentice that he would follow the will of the Force. It would surely take him on the path that he needed to be on. He reminded Obi-Wan to trust that. Out of the corner of their eyes, he could see Anakin with the Queen of Naboo. They were both smiling, and Anakin was telling her about the attack on the Trade Federation battleship. Hours later, the Council did arrive, and with them was Master Dooku. He came up to where Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan were standing, and he congratulated them on their success. Dooku also gave his praises to young Obi-Wan Kenobi, because his master spoke very highly of him, and also he helped kill a Sith. Of course, Dooku knew the skill that Maul had, and he was very relieved to learn that Qui-Gon had survived the encounter. However, there was a part of him that was secretly wary of Sidious' reaction to the news. Sidious obviously knew, but there was nothing said during the entire trip from Coruscant to Naboo, which was probably intentional on Sidious' part. He likely didn't want to draw attention to their connection. With Maul dead, Dooku would make a fine replacement for Sidious. But as Dooku thought about it, he pondered over the possibilities of Qui-Gon coming over to the dark side and joining him. Of course, it wouldn't be easy to convince Qui-Gon, but he hoped that he would be a useful ally in their cause. Dooku's disenchantment with the Republic led him to join the dark side and reject the Jedi. Qui-Gon's disenchantment with the Republic didn't lead him to completely disregard the Jedi. Qui-Gon's whole philosophy was that he was with the Jedi because the Jedi were the light. He went to the light because it was there. He didn't care for the darkness, and so for Dooku, he knew it would take some convincing. As it turns out, it required no convincing. After the victory celebration, Grandmaster Yoda spoke to Qui-Gon about the training of Anakin Skywalker alone. The Council had collectively come to an agreement. Anakin Skywalker would not become a Jedi. At first, Qui-Gon was outraged, and he thought for a moment. A calm resolve fell over him. Anakin did not need to be a Jedi to be trained as one. Qui-Gon didn't say a word. He just nodded his head at Master Yoda and walked away from him. Anakin was eagerly waiting for the word from Qui-Gon outside the room. The Jedi Master walked out of the room that he and Yoda were in as he stood before the young boy. He didn't say a word, just lowering his hand on Anakin's shoulder and guiding him away. There was silence between the two of them the entire walk through the building. Luckily, they were inside the palace, but Qui-Gon continued and Anakin stayed quiet. He knew something happened, but he wasn't sure what it was. The only thing he knew is that it was likely true that he would not become a Jedi. They continued through the halls and then happened upon a procession of the Queen. She stopped and turned over to see her heroes, the two who helped her conquer her planet back, one saving the Gungans by blowing up a destroyer, and the other fighting off an evil Sith. She asked Anakin if he was ready to become a Jedi, but Anakin looked up to Qui-Gon. Padme got the hint that something was going on, and Qui-Gon asked if he may be allowed to speak to her alone. She nodded her head, and the two of them walked away from the procession as a couple of handmaidens walked over to Anakin. Qui-Gon told the Queen that he would feel terrible for asking, but he would like to ask for a vessel. She asked why he needed one, and he told her that Anakin would not be welcomed into the Jedi Order, so he was going to train him himself. She congratulated him on being able to train him, but was very sorry about what happened with the Jedi. And she told him that instead of a ship, she would get them a home here on Naboo. Qui-Gon found this to be very kind, as he told her that the main goal to return to Tatooine was to free Anakin's mother. Padme expressed that she planned on doing the same thing. Of course, as a 14-year-old girl, she forgot how important her leadership would be in the days, weeks, months, and even years after such an invasion. She at this point didn't realize it would take much longer for her to get to Shmi and free her than she would like. Qui-Gon told her that he would take care of it right now, and it would all be done and over with immediately. Padme said that she would have all the arrangements made for the two of them before they came back. He thanked her for her kindness, and she thanked him for his courage. As they walked back, Qui-Gon took young Skywalker with him, and Anakin found the courage to ask Qui-Gon what would happen to him. Qui-Gon simply told the boy that he would take over his training from here on out, without the help of the Jedi. Anakin asked if he was still going to be trained as a Jedi, and Qui-Gon shook his head, expressing that it wouldn't be exactly like that. Qui-Gon planned on sticking to the Boken Jedi path, which was more or less those who were not trained inside the halls of the temple or trained with the code in mind. For Anakin, not much would really change, considering Qui-Gon never stuck to the code anyways. They just made their way to the hangar bay, and when they got there, they found Dooku waiting for them. He asked Qui-Gon what he was doing, and it was explained. Dooku continued and asked if Master Yoda's assumptions were correct. Qui-Gon didn't know what he meant, but Dooku explained that Yoda was under the impression that Qui-Gon had forgone the ways of the Jedi Order. He nodded his head and apologized to Dooku for abandoning him. Dooku shook his head quickly and told his former student that he would like to accompany him to wherever he was going. He had something interesting that Qui-Gon might take interest in. So Dooku came along with them, and they entered a small shuttle and departed for Tatooine. On the trip from Naboo to Tatooine, Dooku and Qui-Gon talked while Anakin slept. Been a long journey for Skywalker. He went from Coruscant to Naboo, and then participated in the battle, all without sleeping. Of course, the little sleep he did get was in his first trip through hyperspace and in Padme's residence, but all the changes made it difficult to sleep. Dooku told Qui-Gon that he could help him through an external source. Qui-Gon was interested in this proposition, but he had no clue how thick the plot was. The only thing that Dooku mentioned was the fact that this external source was trying to help end the corruption inside the Jedi Order and the Republic. This did catch Qui-Gon's attention, though there was an identifiable difference between Dooku and Qui-Gon when it came to their disenchantment with the Jedi Order. It came in varying degrees, and Dooku always had a lot larger distaste for it. Dooku didn't want to allude to it being a Sith, especially since Qui-Gon was interested. With his former students separated from the Order, he would pry on it. Sidious would be looking for more allies with Maul's death, and Qui-Gon, along with Skywalker, filled those roles. Dooku just knew that if he wanted to have any real chance of convincing Qui-Gon to join the Sith, he needed Qui-Gon to join him, and then Sidious. On Naboo, Obi-Wan was completely distraught. The Jedi were preparing to return back to Coruscant, and both of his recent masters in the Jedi lineage had seemingly abandoned the Order. Despite his one interaction with Dooku that day, he didn't want to think of him being the only one left. Of course, this lineage went all the way back to Master Yoda, and as a boy, Obi-Wan often prided himself as a descendant of Yoda's lineage. But now it felt bittersweet. He was the last in the line, and alone. He had plenty of friends within the Jedi Order, but he didn't know how to feel at the moment. The council members all urged him to return to the temple with them. Obi-Wan acknowledged this, but expressed his desire to wait here until Qui-Gon's return. The council kind of upright dismissed him and went along their way. Ironically, the Chancellor came up to Obi-Wan and asked him if he was alright. Kenobi just shrugged, and told him that he didn't know what to do. His master left the Order, seemingly, and so did his master's master. Palpatine told him that he was sure that there'd be better opportunities in the galaxy than being a Jedi. Obi-Wan inquisitively asked, like what? Palpatine just smiled and told him that the mystery of the Force was one that many wished to understand. Perhaps he would find his belonging doing the same. If he ever wanted anyone to talk to, he could always reach out, as he handed Obi-Wan a small device that had his personal frequency on it. Obi-Wan asked why Palpatine was being so kind, and he just stopped and turned around with a gentle smile on his face, expressing to Obi-Wan that he knew what it felt like to be alone. The armed guards swarmed Palpatine and he was escorted back into the ship. Obi-Wan never liked politicians. However, this warmness and kindness showed why Palpatine was the Chancellor. Perhaps he would take him up on his offer. Obi-Wan looked down the small device. Why was he just given this? It seemed so odd. On Tatooine, Qui-Gon and Dooku walked through the streets without Anakin. He was still sleeping on the ship. Dooku had some outer rim credits and they used those credits to buy Shmi Skywalker. Dooku already learned of what Qui-Gon's plans were, but now Qui-Gon was leaning more into the supposed plan that Dooku had with his external support. Dooku expressed that he would introduce them in due time, but if he wanted to try it sooner, then he was more than welcome to. Qui-Gon knew that without the backing of the Order, he needed the support he could get. With Shmi, they took them back to the shuttle, and at some point when they were in hyperspace, Anakin woke up to see her. He was so confused and excited, he didn't know whether to smile or cry, but he did both, leaping into her arms and telling her that he was so happy to see her. Shmi was well aware of the home that Qui-Gon acquired for them on Naboo. It was an upper-class home that had more rooms than most complexes on Tatooine. Before Anakin woke up, Qui-Gon told her about everything that happened, and while she was disappointed, she was glad to know that Qui-Gon didn't abandon Anakin. It was more telling of his character than anything else. When the group returned to Naboo, Qui-Gon was surprised to see Obi-Wan still here. Dooku told his former student that he would be back at some point, but wished him luck on his endeavors. Obi-Wan looked as if he had been crying. His eyes were red, and Qui-Gon asked him what happened to him. He told him that he was confused and he didn't know where to go. He was shocked that Qui-Gon left, and Dooku did too, though there was no confirmation of Dooku having left. The lineage that sat behind him all vanished aside from Yoda. Qui-Gon reminded Obi-Wan that he should trust the Force. It was a guide that everyone needed, but few allowed themselves to trust. He asked Obi-Wan why he didn't trust him. Kenobi just told his master that he was trying to, but he was also waiting for Qui-Gon to return. The former Jedi Master told Obi-Wan that there was a new home here on Naboo that he could utilize until he was ready to leave and begin his own journey. Obi-Wan was very appreciative, but he asked if it meant that he would also have to forgo his ways of the Jedi Order. Qui-Gon nodded his head. To Obi-Wan, this was a big deal. The Jedi Order was his life. It meant everything to him to be a Jedi, mostly because he worked so hard to actually become one to begin with. He would have made a fine Jedi, but his fear pushed him back into his former teacher's arms. He didn't want to lose Qui-Gon. Not yet. For weeks, the four of them would reside on Naboo, peacefully. Shmi was able to rest, and she showed it in her eyes, as Anakin began his journey through the Force. Obi-Wan, on the other hand, was becoming antsy, and so he contacted the Chancellor's private frequency and confessed his state of confusion. Palpatine responded by the end of the day, and told Obi-Wan that he would like to talk. The following day, they would have a long-time conversation about Obi-Wan's feelings and how he felt having left the Jedi Order. Sidious could see it all coming into play. He had a number of students at his disposal. Each of them could replace the other. All of them were there so that he could have the perfect pupil, Anakin Skywalker. He was the key to all of it, but as Dooku suggested, Qui-Gon would be a useful ally. It was also something to note that Obi-Wan had left the Order too. But Sidious was well aware of this when Dooku told him. He didn't play stupid, he just told Dooku that he knew about all of it. A bond between the Chancellor and the former Jedi, Obi-Wan, formed, and while it wasn't a massive bond by any means, it was a start. Obi-Wan had no reason to believe that Palpatine was a Sith. The journey simply continued from there, and Qui-Gon developed into Anakin's father figure more and more. Anakin, in all sincerity, was becoming a broken Jedi. He wasn't anything other than that. He was being taught how to be a Jedi, just without being in the temple. During this period, since Maul's death, Yaddle was killed by Dooku in the industrial sector. Yoda felt great pain over all of this, the loss of 3 members from his last lineage, and then of course the death of his good friend, Master Yaddle. Everything felt so out of place, and he felt his failures as a Jedi Grand Master had peaked, and so, in a moment of realization, he stepped down from the role. Sworn into his place was Jedi Master Yarael Poof, one of the few remaining council members from the High Republic. The other choice was Opa Rancisis, but he told Yarael that the position belonged to him. Despite the age difference between Yoda and Yarael, the change that could be sworn in didn't come. The Order was far too gone, and Yarael, having been a part of the Council for the longer part of the last 100 years, had no reason to want to change any of the Order's standings. Qui-Gon did keep up with the Jedi Order. He wanted to see it succeed, but every week, he became even more distraught about its standings. Despite Yoda having stepped down from the role of Grand Master, he still sat on the High Council and had a considerable role, as Qui-Gon would assume. Yarael was just a younger version of Yoda without any innovative stance, and as Qui-Gon and Dooku talked, Qui-Gon fell further and further into his former teacher's trap. Part of Dooku felt bad for leading Qui-Gon on this way, but he didn't want to see Qui-Gon killed by the Sith Lord. Though he didn't really see any falter from Qui-Gon, he was more or less hyper-focused on Anakin's development. Dooku did get a hold of Obi-Wan and brought him out to Sereno, so they could start their own endeavor. Dooku saw a lot of potential in Obi-Wan, and with a bond already being started with Palpatine, Dooku believed it was only a matter of time until Obi-Wan fell right along their lines. Dooku did the same thing to Kenobi as he did Jinn. He just played off of his emotions regarding the Jedi and everything around him. With Obi-Wan, it was much easier considering he was younger and he had never seen the dark side of Dooku, especially not the same way that Qui-Gon had become used to. Obi-Wan began using his hatred, and then after a couple years, he was brought before Palpatine, or as Lord Tyrannus called him, Lord Sidious. Obi-Wan and Palpatine's plans had continued to grow, and Obi-Wan was actively using the dark side, but not in a spiteful way. When he realized that they were all Sith, he panicked. He didn't want to be a Sith, and he ignited his lightsaber. Sidious stepped back and told Dooku to deal with Kenobi. Obi-Wan had seen Dooku duel a number of times up until this point, and their duel was able to carry out of the room that Sidious was in. It was very flashy, and Obi-Wan still used the ever so aggressive Form 4, so it was a tug of war. Dooku went as aggressive as he possibly could, which forced Obi-Wan out onto a platform. Dooku slammed his blade against Obi-Wan's and then dragged him forward. Dooku grabbed Obi-Wan's robes as he looked up at Dooku with terror in his eyes. He told Obi-Wan that he didn't want to have to kill him. He was like a grandson to him, and it wouldn't feel right. He told Obi-Wan to go get the girl he mentioned in the past, and forget about all of this. Have a life for himself, not for a cause. He didn't deserve the pain either the Jedi or the Sith would cause him. Obi-Wan looked back in shock as Dooku grabbed his lightsaber and told him to go. Obi-Wan watched Dooku with fear in his eyes as the Sith Lord took both the lightsabers and banged them together in his hands before making it sound like he had struck down Kenobi. Obi-Wan ran away across the balcony and Sidious came out. He looked at Dooku, who knelt before him. Sidious told him he did well, and told him to come along. One student lost wasn't the end of the world. They still had Qui Gon and Skywalker. Obi-Wan's heart was seemingly fractured, as he didn't know where he wanted to go in his own life. But perhaps Dooku was onto something. Maybe he should just allow time to pass by, and maybe he should avoid being a martyr. There was one reason, and one reason only, that Obi-Wan was at all okay with this, and it was because he knew the full extent of Dooku's plans. He knew exactly what Dooku wanted to do, and so he trusted him. If Dooku was going to save the Republic and the Jedi, then maybe it was better to just keep his personal emotions out of the matter. This was a lie by Dooku, of course. For the past 4 years since the blockade at Naboo, he thought about going back to Mandalore, but he believed he should stay with his journey in the Force rather than do what he wanted. He didn't have any confidence to choose for himself, and what Dooku did was liberate him. While Dooku initially would have had no issue killing Obi-Wan, he knew that he didn't have to kill Obi-Wan. They didn't have to be rivals because Obi-Wan wouldn't have to be in the way. Of course, if Kenobi denied his request, he would have killed him on the spot, but the mutual agreement between the both of them, without having it said, is that Obi-Wan would stay out of the way if he didn't want to be a part of it. Truthfully, Sidious wasn't dumb either. He knew what Dooku was doing, but he could sense and feel Kenobi's fear. He and Dooku had already instilled this into his mind that the Jedi were beyond saving, so he didn't care what Obi-Wan did. Even if Obi-Wan did go back to the Jedi, they wouldn't believe someone who already left the Order. Though that wasn't even a concern, because he knew Obi-Wan well enough by this point. They spent 4 years together. Dooku told him that he was going to save the Jedi, but that was actually just destroying the Jedi, not actually saving them. The dark side was all about showing no mercy, and this wasn't mercy. It was literally laziness. Anakin, on the other hand, was growing along remarkably on Naboo. He and Padme were able to see each other often, and despite Anakin's early crush on her, the two of them developed into very close friends. Anakin's relationship with Qui Gon and Shmi was very tight, and while there were no romantic feelings shared between Qui Gon and Shmi, to Anakin, they were his mother and father. To use the Force for Anakin was extremely easy, and Qui Gon only made it easier. While Qui Gon was becoming increasingly annoyed with the Jedi and even faltering in the darkness from time to time, his main goal was training Anakin. This made him lose sight on his own mindset. With Dooku whispering in his ear constantly about the dark side, Qui Gon was letting go of his own moral code one day at a time. This was very integral for Dooku's long-term plan for his former student. Anakin also had collected a Kyber crystal and constructed his own lightsaber at this point thanks to some help from Qui-Gon. Anakin was working through the basic progressions of lightsaber training, but his real strength was in the Force. Dooku would pop in from time to time to help with the training as well. There was one thing Dooku was extremely apprehensive about telling Qui-Gon, which was the clone army. With the war set to happen in the next 6 years, it'd be impossible to hide it. Though Dooku considered that perhaps the key to it was just making sure Qui-Gon watched the Jedi get involved. There was no reason for him to believe that Dooku was involved with the clone army, so it'd just be perfect completing Qui-Gon's turn to the dark side. Across the galaxy on Mandalore, Obi-Wan reunited with his longtime friend, Satine Kryze. She was very welcoming, and she was accepting of him coming to her home world. She had done so much for her people in the years since he was last there. It had been nearly 15 years since his mission with Qui-Gon on Mandalore, and to see the planet recover from the Civil War so quickly, he couldn't help but congratulate her. Of course, for the two of them, there was a fear that the flame had died out, but had only grown stronger since the last time they saw each other. In the years that followed, Anakin reached a potential that only the likes of Qui-Gon could have gotten him to. Though the secret darkness that had been lurking within Qui-Gon was making its way into Anakin as an adult. Skywalker was extremely powerful with the Force, and without anything holding him back, he was nearly unstoppable. Having sparred with both Qui-Gon and Dooku, Anakin was more than enough prepared to fight anyone he came across. Though part of Qui-Gon's training revolved around the idea that a laser sword did not make one a true user of the Force. It was a very incredible weapon, yes, but it was not the only thing in the galaxy. A main emphasis for this lesson was because of Anakin's fascination with the blade. But thanks to Qui-Gon, Anakin's arrogant demeanor didn't foster into adulthood, and he was more than talented with using the Force rather than that of a lightsaber. Anakin's relationship with Padme hadn't gone any further than besties, and both of them were okay with that. They spent time with each other whenever Padme was back home on Naboo, and he even got to join her at her family's villa a couple times to enjoy the nice sands and beaches of Naboo. Padme and her family were at this point just simply an extension of Qui-Gon and Shmi, which he still very much so considered his parents, with Uncle Kenobi checking in every so often from Mandalore and his grandparents Dooku and Palpatine. While Qui-Gon was off about the whole Palpatine thing to begin with, as the years went by, he was more and more alright with having Palpatine around Skywalker. The main thing for Anakin was the seemingly competitive vibe he got from Palpatine. It was like two different paternal styles that were trying to mesh against each other, and Anakin was left to choose between Jinn and Palpatine. Of course, Anakin didn't think too much about it because he just assumed he was losing his own mind, but it was the truth that was happening. Sidious still believed Qui-Gon had the potential to be an ally, but he also couldn't be responsible for Qui-Gon's death. Sidious knew that he needed to bring Skywalker into the Sith. He needed to continue lurching. It would take time, but Sidious had plenty of it. Dooku would be killed by the Jedi at some point in the coming war, or at least that's what Sidious believed, and a droid army would march right through Theed, kill Padme, Qui-Gon, and Shmi. Where else would Skywalker have to go but Sidious or Kenobi, and Kenobi was so far out of the way it didn't really matter. It was a perfect plan. Qui-Gon by this point had just a little more knowledge than Maul did. He knew that Palpatine was Sidious, but he didn't know about the plans. He knew that Sidious was a Sith, and while that sort of unnerved him, he was more comfortable with than he would have been at the beginning of his journey. Sidious and Dooku pried on Qui-Gon, and it just pulled him deeper and deeper into it. When the Clone Wars began, Qui-Gon was closer than ever to being a Sith. While Grandmaster Yarael Poof died in the years leading up to the Battle of Geonosis, Oppa Rensesis was not the perfect replacement. The Council was shifting between Grandmasters at an extraordinary rate, but Yoda wouldn't step back up to the mantle. It had intern Terra Sanube serve, Plo Koon serve, and then the Council came back around to Master Even Peel. It didn't really make a difference. Yoda inspired a multitude of generations built to be complacent, and those old enough to remember the end of the High Republic, they knew nothing but the retreat from the wider galaxy. The Jedi didn't try and claim their stake on anything but their own failure and their own fears. Where the Niles scared them, the Separatists didn't. Qui-Gon couldn't believe it, and when the Jedi went in to fight the war on behalf of the Republic, he was shocked. Perhaps he should have seen it coming, but it still surprised him. Though Qui-Gon became thoroughly disenchanted with his former teacher when everything clicked and he realized that Dooku was leading the resurgence. It added to the confusion he had when he realized that Dooku and Palpatine were best buddies, standing on the opposite sides of the same war. He couldn't piece it together, but it was the final straw. Truthfully, it was Palpatine's mistake that put him into this position, because he believed Qui-Gon would have joined by this point. Obviously that didn't happen, but it didn't matter. The only thing keeping Qui-Gon from telling the Jedi was the fact that he didn't care about them anymore. He dove straight into the dark side and disregarded both Palpatine, Dooku, and the Jedi. Anakin was right alongside of him. He didn't like the fact that Dooku had lied to his father, or at least that's what Anakin had been calling Qui-Gon for the last 3 years. Qui-Gon never used his lightsaber, so little did he know that the intentions and his energy shifted the vibrant emerald color of his lightsaber into an orange haze. It was teetering on crimson, but that little part of Qui-Gon still existed from within. Because of this, Qui-Gon and Anakin left Naboo with Shmi, and they went on the journey of the Force across the galaxy. Qui-Gon could feel himself slipping further and further into someone he did not want to become, but it's like he couldn't resist it. It really scared him when he saw it shine from Skywalker in his training, but the darkness of the Clone War made it nearly impossible to resist such a pull. The main contributor to this, aside from the war, was the betrayal. Sidious was furious. He believed they lost Skywalker due to his failure to anticipate Qui-Gon's reaction. Because, as Dooku realized, his disenchantment with the Republic and the Jedi was mirrored in his student, just not to the same extent. Dooku at this point had to make a choice: Qui-Gon or Sidious. The tragedy is he knew that if he chose Qui-Gon, the Republic would be forced to suffer through corruption and ineptitude for the foreseeable future. All Dooku ever wanted was to bring peace and justice to the galaxy. As Yaddle suggested, so many had died for it, but in Dooku's vision, it was necessary. People would have to die, but it didn't matter. His former student and Skywalker had gone missing. The only immunity Dooku had was that he was in control of the droid army. For 3 years, the Clone Wars would rage on, with no sight of Qui-Gon, Anakin, or Shmi. And while Obi-Wan would face resistance on Mandalore, Dooku wouldn't back the Death Watch because of the soft spot he had for Kenobi. He didn't want Obi-Wan to be killed, but he handled himself quite well on Mandalore. Obi-Wan won the Darksaber in combat, and Satine and him placed the weapon into a museum, believing the weapon should belong to the people, so that they may share it together. Her sister would eventually turn against the old way-loving Mandalorians after Gar Saxon rose to power. A civil war would break out, but never on Mandalore or in Sundari. All of it would transpire on Concordia. Qui-Gon and Anakin lost their hold of the light and delved deeper into the darkness. Despite each of them having each other and Shmi, the darkness called out to both of them, and despite their taste for the war, the Jedi, Dooku, Sidious, and the Republic led them right there. The war did come to an end, and they watched as Order 66 wiped out the entire Jedi Order. With the war won, a headhunt was placed on Dooku's head, and he retreated from his position in the galaxy as Countess Sereno. During his retreat, he found Qui-Gon and Anakin, who nearly killed him. But Shmi stepped in between them and told them to forget what had been done. Her words were calming, but she was kind of right to an end. Despite what Dooku had done, there was a larger foe on the horizon. It was Sidious. Despite the Empire replacing the Republic, Dooku couldn't believe how nothing changed. It only got more corrupt, and he couldn't believe he didn't see it coming. The trio departed for Coruscant and arrived in the middle of the night, using the darkness to conceal their presence and search for the Sith Lord. As they traversed quietly through the Emperor's residence, they could feel his dark energy residing through the Force. But when they found him, they couldn't help but think of the irony. Sidious often gloated about the idiocy of his master, and how he's unable to sense him. Well, Sidious was the last in the line of the Sith, forever tarnished by the reputation of Darth Sidious the Sleepy. He may have been responsible for wiping out thousands of Jedi, ending an entire clone war, and killing Darth Plagueis the Wise, but he never sensed his greatest adversaries coming to him in his sleep. Dooku and Qui-Gon were relieved. While Dooku was a talented duelist, the dark side had taken its toll on his body, and he wouldn't have been able to stand up against the likes of Sidious for long. The same thing went for Qui Gon Jinn. Both of them knew that they would likely die for the future that Skywalker would have to secure himself. But they lived, and they returned home after killing him in his sleep. Dooku didn't because, as his time as a Separatist leader, he couldn't, but Qui-Gon and Anakin did. Dooku of Serena would find a peaceful backwater world and retire, finding peace in what he helped accomplish. The Sith, the Jedi, the Republic, all gone. It's what he wanted. He didn't care for the Sith, nor the Jedi. Of course, the government would be in shambles, but he had faith in it. Anakin would leave Qui-Gon to be on his own journey, one that would bring him right back to Coruscant. He joined up with his good friend Padme and returned with her to Coruscant as she declared herself as Empress. Rite of passage due to being from Naboo. No, it didn't really make sense, but it worked. It caused an uproar, but she was fine. Padme's only intention was to fix what Palpatine destroyed. Padme spent forever fighting the war, and now, with the power of Empress, she was able to make things the way she wanted them to be. But everything she did was for the collective good of the galaxy, which benefited from her short stint as Empress. The clones would be taken care of, democracy restored, and the role of Chancellor reduced to nothing more than a speaker. She dismantled the entire system and called it quits. Her life as a public servant had been stressful, and she made the best of it. With Anakin by her side throughout the entire endeavor, she was able to keep it cool. Their bond with each other is much deeper, being that they had so many years to fully understand each other in a platonic way. Though once there was peace in the galaxy, Padme and Anakin broke the seal on their friendship and entered a relationship. For them, nothing screamed happiness like friends to lovers, and they returned home. Qui-Gon's return from the darkness would be stoic in his nature, and it would inspire Anakin to stay away from it. With the Jedi all but extinct, aside from a few, Qui-Gon and Anakin decided to construct a Boken Academy, one for all users of the Force. Ones from the former Jedi Order and anyone who felt called. Naboo became a sanctuary for this Boken Academy, and the man who toiled the most with the fall into darkness returned to the light as Qui-Gon the White. He would serve as the helm of the Order as its seer, the one who walked both the light and the dark. While Anakin could let go of the title of Chosen One and find his own sense of peace, just as Obi-Wan had, with the love of his life. And that, my friends, is our story. Again, special thanks to Galvan Gaming, Tristan, Darth Revan, Pimp Daddy Bane, The Last Jedi, Apollo, Weewoo670, Ozzy Tano, Darth Nox, The Eternal Padawan, Johnny Naguin, Sans the Skeleton, Jedi Sloth, Mr. Yeet Gamer, Lord Cali, Youngling Slayer 66, Mad Manic Studios, Anakin003, Fordo's Legacy Star Wars, Lemon Knight, Rex the Wolf, The Man with 3 first names, Dark Saint 46, Baron Joshua, and Lord Deadwing for supporting the channel. Smash the like button if you enjoyed the video. If you want to see that list get longer, or you want to see me mispronounce your name, go check out the Patreon. There's cool things on there like the Sith Clone Wars, which is getting closer. We got 10 episodes done. I got 4 more left. There's 14. It's a lot. I'm so excited. Anyways, let's talk about the story. So there's obviously this whole notion of dark side, light side endings. That's what this is. It's a dark side, light side ending. It's like this weird duality. It's dark side, but it kind of ends in a good way. But it's like, a bunch of people died in the process. It's like, So like that kind of duality is kind of fun to work with, where it's like a dark side ending, but it kind of works out well. And the challenge in this video was making Qui-Gon's turn believable. Qui-Gon is literally like the embodiment of the light. So like having his turn make like sense was really difficult to do. And I spent forever trying to make it make sense. And that's what my main goal was, to make it make sense for him to fall into this darkness, but rise out of it. Like Qui-Gon would, because he's trying to be Anakin's father while also trying to resist a pull of darkness from not just Dooku, but Palpatine. And so it was like a really convoluted story, but I think it worked out for everyone in the end. Not the Jedi, but they don't matter. It's okay. I hope you all enjoyed. I love you all. Spread the love, and always remember, my friends, may the Force be with you.